Chapter 3 is on our emotional world, but before we get into that, let's just talk real quickly about Chapter 2, Who Am I? And those fundamental characteristics that we talked about and discussed, everything from will and intellect to our conscience to ourselves as moral beings, how critical it is to know what I am made up of as a human person, right? Chapter 3 now goes directly into our emotional world and how it holds an integral place in who we are and how we love. Right? These emotional motors, you could call them, are the inner world of ourselves, right? They're spontaneous, they're involuntary, they're not positive or negative, they're neutral. But they become positive or negative when we do something with them, right? So what we want to try to do in this chapter is understand what they are and how to process them intelligently to help us grow in self-awareness. So what are the emotions? I define them as psychic movements in us that produce motion and energy to help us in life. They are called motors because they move, they cause us to move. They are like sensors, and they help our reason to detect things that are important to us. In this book, we're not going to necessarily hone in on bodily feelings like pain or hunger. We're going to try to talk about emotions as reactions to stimuli around us: fear, anger, joy, and the like. So what do I do with my emotions? First, we have to understand that the integration of our emotional world begins by understanding that our emotions are part of who we are. But they don't control us, right? They're not us. They're part of our human makeup, and so essentially to love, but they don't control us. They're not us, right? However, if we don't train ourselves to pause and to process and to reflect before acting, then we can do very unfortunate things, as we know. We might be acting on impulse or just merely unrefined emotions. We will be able to, through the pausing and reflecting, avoid hurtful behavior to ourselves and to others. The two most important things that we want to take away from this is, first, that I am free to respond or not to my emotional world. I'm free. Despite their intensity, I can choose. And then secondly, that emotions are never to be suppressed. They're meant to be felt. Feel the feeling. So important, because they are part of us. And in doing that, that helps us process and use them in the most appropriate and healthy way. Let's take example of anger. Anger is a good example of an emotion that is not easy to integrate into our good decision making, which is the hallmark of emotional chastity. We want to be making good decisions in love. The key here to anger is that, as I mentioned, we need to feel it, right? When people hurt you or offend you or things around you upset you, you're going to react with possible anger, right? So it's good to know that it's not something that you shouldn't be reacting. No, feel the feeling. Do not repress it. However, beware of what you do with it, hurting yourself, hurting others, hurting God. What about shame? Shame is a very interesting and unique emotion in the human person. Only human beings feel shame. St. John Paul II says that shame is bound up with the very nature of the human person. In the ambit of human love, it is the one emotion that functions to help us exclude or reject an attitude of using another person in our behavior. One thing to highlight here under shame is the difference between shame and guilt. What I like to think about these two is the following. Guilt is I have done something wrong, and negative shame can be I am wrong or I am bad, right? One thing is I've done something bad, the other is I am bad, and more of an identity issue, right? That's under the difference between guilt and shame. What about the emotions and the heart? Are they the same thing? Are they not? A lot of times when we hear emotions and heart, we kind of think that they're the same thing. They're not. The heart, let's call the heart the interior headquarters of the human person. That's where we find all the strengths and the weaknesses of ourselves are right there in our heart. What's important about the heart is that we learn to pause on the movements of our heart and take time to, as we've been saying, process, think through before we make those important decisions. What about something called heart intuition? Kind of that intuitive sense of what we should be doing or not doing. A lot of times intuition is right. There's something in us that just says this is not right or this is right. That intuition, that strong, let's call it echo in us. That's what John Paul II calls it. The echo of knowing, for example, in love, that there's got to be something better than I'm experiencing now in love. It's almost like God wrote it into us, that we would have an experience, a taste of what that perfect love was. That's what we call the intuition, the interior calling to be true to love as a total self-gift, when we know it and when we don't know it. We also know, finally, that love doesn't always feel good. And we kind of know that, even though our culture can describe it as kind of this very emotionally charged moment of our life, which it is, and very beautifully so. But love does mature, and it becomes times when we're in relationships where our gift of self is exactly that, a renunciation of me for the other, right? The dying to self, you could say, the letting go of something that I think or want for the good of the other. So love, it goes beyond just feeling good to a maturing acceptance of the other for the good of the other and for the good of ourselves. Finally, in your small group discussion, I want you to hone in on or really focus on, have you understand your emotional world? What do I do with my emotions? And I believe a reflection on that will really help you then go into the anger chapter and the uniqueness of shame, and understand those very important parts of your human experience. I hope that helps. God bless.